It's 11:42 p.m. on a Thursday. The rest of the world has turned off its lights, but the blue glow of a single monitor cuts through the dark of a small room. There is no music playing. There are no notifications buzzing on the desk. Just the rhythmic, steady tapping of a keyboard, or the quiet scraping of a tool against wood, or perhaps just the sound of deep, deliberate breathing. To anyone looking in from the outside, this scene looks incredibly lonely. They might see a young man who is isolated, perhaps left behind by a fast-moving world, or struggling to find his footing. They wonder why he isn't out, why he isn't broadcasting his life on a story, why he isn't demanding attention. But if you look closer at his eyes, there is no sadness there. There is no panic. There is only a profound, immovable focus. Maybe that's you. You know exactly what it feels like to sit in that quiet space, miles away from the noise of opinions, trends, and superficial validation. You know the strange comfort of working on something when nobody is watching. You aren't hiding from the world. You are simply building something within it. This is the reality of a modern archetype that society frequently misinterprets. We live in a culture that loudest wins. We are told that if a tree falls in a forest and no one posts about it, it didn't happen. Success has been equated with visibility. If you aren't constantly announcing your next move, celebrating your minor wins, or branding your personality, the world assumes you are stagnant. But there is a specific type of man who operates on an entirely different frequency. He doesn't announce his goals. He doesn't seek applause for tasks that aren't finished. He understands a fundamental truth that modern society has forgotten. True competence doesn't need a megaphone. Men like this often slip under the radar during their teenage years and early 20s. In high school or college, they might not have been the center of attention. They weren't the loudest in the room, nor were they desperately trying to fit into every social circle. While everyone else was busy cultivating an image, this man was quietly assessing his environment, figuring out how things work, and mastering his internal world. When a young man chooses to build in silence, the world doesn't just leave him alone. It begins to project its own anxieties onto his solitude. Friends might stop calling because they assume he's antisocial. Family members might express concern, asking why he doesn't get out more. The narrative shifts from him being an independent thinker to him being isolated or left behind. And when you sit in that silence long enough, the ambient noise of those doubts can start to echo in your own mind. You start to wonder if they are right. You watch your peers collect fast, easy wins online. The superficial praise, the immediate social validation. And you look down at your own hands, working on a project that might take months or even years to fully materialize. You feel the heavy weight of a profound psychological tension, the desire to be known versus the absolute necessity of becoming competent first. And when you sit in that silence long enough, the ambient noise of those doubts can start to echo in your own mind. You start to wonder if they are right. You watch your peers collect fast, easy wins online. The superficial praise, the immediate social validation. And you look down at your own hands, working on a project that might take months or even years to fully materialize. You feel the heavy weight of a profound psychological tension, the desire to be known versus the absolute necessity of becoming competent first. This silent path is rarely a sudden choice. It is a slow evolutionary development that usually begins in early adolescence. Men who build in silence often grew up in environments where noise was chaotic and unreliable.
Perhaps they realized early on that promises made by others were easily broken, or that the loudest voices in a room were often the most fragile. They learned through subtle and sometimes painful lessons that relying on external structures was a gamble. So they turned inward. They realized that the only territory they could truly control, protect, and develop was their own mind and their own skill set. You've probably seen this pattern manifest in small habits. It starts with a hyperfixation on a specific hobby, a mechanical problem, a line of code, or a physical discipline. While others use their free time to escape reality, this type of man uses his free time to master a micro slice of it. He doesn't just play the video game. He wants to understand the game mechanics. He doesn't just listen to the music. He dissects the production.
Psychologists call this an internal locus of control, but in the lived experience of a young man, it feels like a quiet shield against a chaotic world. There is a fascinating historical parallel to this in the concept of the traditional apprenticeship. For centuries, a young man entering a trade was expected to disappear from public life for 7 years. He lived in the shadow of a master, swept floors, ruined materials, learned from. To break out of that internal courtroom, a man has to recognize the invisible mechanics of his own mind. The hyper-perfectionism that feels like a flaw is actually a misdirected superpower. In psychology, this is known as a high capacity for self-regulation, but in everyday life, it's simply the mark of a craftsman. He refuses to put his name on anything that feels cheap, rushed, or fraudulent. This refusal to settle for shortcuts grants this archetype a series of hidden strengths that society rarely notices until they are fully formed aware of. First among these is a rare depth of focus. Because he has spent years conditioning his brain to operate without the constant dopamine hits of likes, comments, and immediate social approval, he can sustain attention on complex problems long after others have grown bored or frustrated. Where someone else sees an insurmountable wall of tedious tasks, he sees an interesting puzzle that just requires a little more quiet time to solve. His solitude has mutated into an unshakable independence. Furthermore, his quiet nature makes him an exceptional judge of character. While he was sitting in the background, observing rather than participating, he wasn't being passive. He was learning how to read the room. He knows exactly what insecure bravado looks like. He can spot a superficial promise from a mile away. Because he doesn't crave the crowd's approval, he cannot be easily manipulated by flattery or social pressure. His skepticism has matured into a sharp, protective discernment. But here's where it gets complicated. While independence protects a man from external manipulation, it can also build a wall that keeps out genuine connection. When you become entirely self-reliant, you start to view needing help as a form of weakness. You convince yourself that if you want something done right, you must always do it alone. The hidden danger here is that total isolation ceases to be a strategy for building competence and becomes a defense mechanism against vulnerability. You find yourself rejecting collaborations, turning down advice from older mentors, and keeping potential friends at arm's length because you are terrified that letting someone in will disrupt the controlled environment you've built. The independent builder can easily become an isolated island, forgetting that even the most well-engineered fortress is still a prison if you can never step outside its gates. The quiet phase is not meant to be a permanent residence. It is a season of preparation. You don't cultivate strength in private just to hide it from the world forever. The ultimate goal of building in silence is to eventually reveal something of substance, to step into the light, not to beg for attention, but to offer genuine value, stability, and competence to the people who need it most. If you are that man, sitting under the lone lamp late at night, understand that your inclination to withdraw and work is not a defect. You are not weird for wanting to figure things out on your own. And you are not left behind just because you aren't shouting your progress from the rooftops. The world is full of loud, empty vessels making a lot of noise. It desperately needs men who know how to quietly hold their ground. Trust the season of invisibility. Let the pressure build. Keep refining the craft, fixing the code, lifting the weight, and studying the patterns when no one is looking. Because the men who build in silence are the ones who ultimately construct the foundations that the rest of the world stands on. The silence isn't just a lack of sound. It is a filter. When you strip away the background noise of modern life, the constant stream of notifications, the performative outcries, the endless pressure to state an opinion on things you don't care about, something fascinating happens to your brain. Your thoughts stabilize. The mental static clears. Men like this often discover that their routine is their greatest anchor. To the outside world, a life built around a rigid schedule, repetitive habits, and a predictable environment looks boring, perhaps even stagnant. They see a young man who does the same things every day, who eats the same meals, who walks the same routes, and they assume he is stuck in a rut. But they don't understand the psychological economy of a builder. He isn't wasting his cognitive energy deciding what to wear, where to go, or how to impress strangers. By turning his daily life into a predictable routine, he converts that routine into stability. And that stability is the launchpad for his internal creativity. He has automated the mundane so he can weaponize the complex. But here's where it gets complicated. When your routine becomes too ironclad, any unexpected disruption can feel like a profound threat. If a new variable enters your space, a shift in your career, an unexpected financial burden, or a person who wants to get close to you, the carefully constructed stability can start to feel brittle. You realize that in your quest to control your environment, you have created a system that only functions when everything goes perfectly. The danger of building exclusively in the dark is that you forget how to navigate the unpredictable, chaotic storms of the daytime. You've probably seen this happen when a sudden crisis hits. A man who is highly competent within the controlled parameters of his room or his laptop can suddenly feel entirely paralyzed when a real-world problem requires immediate, messy social negotiation. He knows how to fix the machine, but he doesn't know how to handle the broken emotion of a human being standing in front of him. The antidote to this brittleness is a shift in how you view your own development. True competence is not the absence of chaos. It is the ability to maintain your internal center while moving through it. The silence you cultivate at night isn't meant to protect you from the world. It is meant to fortify you for it. Think of your quiet hours not as an escape from reality, but as a training ground. You are lifting weights in an empty gym so that when you step onto the field, you can handle the collisions. Society will continue to misunderstand the quiet man. They will call him aloof when he is simply evaluating. They will call him lonely when he is simply selective. They will look at his lack of immediate, flashy success and assume he has given up on the race altogether. Let them think that. There is an immense strategic advantage in being underestimated. While everyone else is burning their energy trying to convince the world they are important, the silent builder is quietly acquiring the skills, the resources, and the mental toughness that actually make a man dangerous. He is letting his actions do the talking, knowing that a single masterpiece speaks louder than 1,000 status updates. It is now past midnight. The monitor is still glowing, casting long shadows across the walls of the room. The rest of the neighborhood is completely dead. The world outside is asleep, dreaming of things they haven't worked for, chasing illusions of success that evaporate the moment